All right, so there'll be some intro music and it'll fade out, and we're live. Welcome to the GRODCAST, everyone. My name is Young Greasy. I'm joined today by Julia Tranfaglia. And would you like to introduce yourself a little bit for the Grod heads?
Sure. I am a director, writer, producer, editor, filmmaker all around. Um, for fun, I play the saxophone on my friend's music. I like to dance, hike, take care of my foster dog, Raina. And yeah, a general creative professional, I'll say that.
For sure. So you play the saxophone. Is that how you got on Spotify with Peter and the Ghosts?
Wow, you do your research. Yeah, that is how I got on Spotify. And I'm credited on like a couple songs. But there's plenty that I'm not like name credited, but I'm just one of the ghosts.
Yeah. How long have you been playing?
Oh gosh, I started playing in middle school when I was like 9 years old. They came in, the high schoolers, they introduced you to all the instruments, and they're like, all right, if you want to take band, you got to pick an instrument. So I just thought the saxophone was so cool and have been playing ever since. I definitely took a bit of a break in college. I really wanted to join bands, but you know, at the school I went to, there really wasn't a band. And the only bands that I could find would be like what do you call them? Like partner schools. And the partner school was Berkeley, and I was just too like imposter syndrome to go play with the Berkeley kids. So, I just took a bit of a break in college and then came back to it as more of a passion and a fun thing to do with friends, you know, post grad.
For sure. I think some of my friends after high school they sold their saxophones, and some of them regretted it, some of them didn't. So
Yeah, fair. I mean, you can get a decent penny from a saxophone, but there's so many things that I think back, like even dumb stuff, like, oh, I wish I didn't get rid of that one piece of clothing. I could really use it. So I'm glad I never did and really stuck with it because it's always been a real piece of joy for me. I love music. I love playing instruments and something I just want to get a lot better at. What kind of instruments do you play? You must do so many as a musician.
I would say classically trained violin, but I haven't played the violin in a long time. Mostly guitar shaped instruments, so like guitar, banjo, bass. Um, but I think I'm most proficient as a vocalist than I am as a guitar player.
Ooh.
But
You tenor,
uh,
bass, or bari?
um, lower end of baritone, I would say. Um, but if there's songs that are too high, I just capo and shift the key.
Smart. Work in your range.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's get started with the first question. Julia, what is important?
What a broad question. I love it though. I'm sure so many people have said the same thing that like what's important to one person is different than what's important to another. There's certainly some things that are basically important to everyone, like your health and wellness is just important if you want to keep living and keep thriving. But I think connection, relationships, having empathy for other people, being able to step outside yourself and seeing other people as like not a reflection of you in the sense of, a very selfish view, but more in a collective view. I think it's really important to recognize that humanity in yourself and others. Friends and family, spending time with the people who matter to you most. I also think in general, just a sense of hope, whether that be a hope for the future or hope for like your dreams and aspirations, just having something to hope for, or even something as small as like to look forward to makes all the difference. So, yeah.
For sure.
What's important to you?
Oh, I think at the end of this season, I'm gonna have someone interview me with the questions, and so I'm saving it.
Okay,
But
fair, 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 fair.
well, cool. Do you are you from the Boston area?
I'm from a small town outside of Boston in Massachusetts. But I went to college in Boston, so I lived there for like 3 years. And like any major city, you're always like, oh, I lived in this landmark place, not the tiny town no one's ever heard of.
For sure. Yeah. I tell people I'm from Syracuse, even though I'm from Jamesville, but Jamesville is just a hamlet. So
I love. So you're a New Yorker.
yeah, upstate, or more like we say central New York, but I grew up there. I went to college in out of state, and then grad school even more out of state. But now I'm just back at home, so it's been kind of nice to be back in the place I grew up. But you do notice how much has changed since you've been gone. Uh,
It's wild, going back to my hometown, Medway. I mean, my family doesn't live there anymore, but some of my family lives really close, so I'll drive through or, go to the dentist in my hometown. And yeah, some things change, some things don't, and I think more than anything, you almost notice how much you've changed too.
yeah, I hope I've changed for the better, but I think a big part of that change is just being more tired.
I feel that. God, I'm always so tired all the time. But hey, you grow and you live, and clearly that exhaustion is also coming from putting in a lot of passion into the things you're doing.
For sure. Um, do you have a favorite superhero?
Ah, that's a good question. Um, I I think the easy go-to answer would be to say Batman. Not because I like that he's a rich jerk who just can buy his way through anything. That's not something I like. What I like about him is that he's so modular as a character that people have adapted him in a lot of variety of ways. Like I think the latest Superman adaptation was really great because it was a lot of optimism and hope and felt very classic. But I think when I see Superman, it feels like the same character every time. Whereas with Batman, the different iterations of him show just such range for the character, which is really cool and it feels exciting every time. Every movie's so different. And selfishly, I mean, The Dark Knight is absolutely one of my favorite movies. I've seen it over 40 times. I've lost count, and it's just so well made. And more than anything, honestly, the villains in the Batman universe are so fascinating and just have such style that the flair is just so much fun.
For sure. So you mentioned The Dark Knight. Is that your favorite iteration of Batman, or are you more an Adam West person?
I would say I'm a Dark Knight person. I mean, I don't know. I think it struck a really nice balance of grounded grittiness that felt much more relatable than some of like the kookier 80s Batman, you know? And it also didn't feel so dark like the latest Batman movies where it just felt heavy. I think both are really wonderful adaptations. I don't know if you'd call them an adaptation, but an interpretation of Batman. I think they're really all wonderful. Um, but it just feels like striking that nice balanced tone of, life is hard and there are difficulties in this world that are hard to overcome, not just, the easy villain in front of you, but like the culture that we all have to live in and try to contend with, and being somebody who's famously trying to help people, but it's questionable how you help people, like those nuanced questions. I don't know. I think it felt like it really hit something deep, and that, like, despite all that, he strove for that optimism, strove to make a difference despite it all, despite how much of a villain he was seen as, by the end of movie two. And um, God, why am I blanking on his name? The cop character played by Gary Oldman.
Gordon.
Yes, thank you, Gordon. I think he's such a good representation of like everybody else, the audience's perspective on Batman, and how when you're really connected with somebody and look up to them, you also can see their flaws, but still like admire that effort that he's put in, and how difficult that journey is.
Yeah, I like that Gordon is always surprised when Batman disappears.
He's like, where'd he go? He's like, come on, that's what he does. And I think he even says that by like movie 3 or whatever with Jason Gordon-Levitt's character Robin. He's like, what? Where did he go? He's like, he does that.
Yeah. All right. I know we just talked about one of your favorite movies, but what is another one of your favorite movies and why?
So I've always loved When Harry Met Sally. And I know since the director recently passed, it's especially on everyone's minds. Just the impact that he had on everyone. I mean, his whole filmography is so impressive and beautiful, like Princess Bride. But despite all that, and yeah, I mean, I've always loved that movie. I think it's wonderful, it's joyful, it's funny, it's heartfelt, it's real. And, a mark of a really good favorite movie for me is the rewatchability of it. A good comfort film, you really can't beat that, because that just is there for you when you're sick, when you need a pick me up. And, there's definitely a time and place for the artsy movies that are dark or sad or difficult, that deal with hard topics, but something that uplifts you like that, or makes you think, or starts a discussion, or just has like really interesting characters that go through a journey together with quotable moments and like iconic scenes and wonderful costumes and looks that people go back to, like those sweaters. I don't know. It's like no notes, just perfect movie. And people still joyfully will watch it on New Year's Eve every year to make sure it happens right when the ball drops, that it hits midnight and stuff like that. I always watch it around Christmas time while I'm wrapping presents, because it also has Christmas in there too. It's a really good every time of year film, but I mean, you just have some of the best people in that film. And people never think about it, but Carrie Fisher's in it. She's a supporting character, and she's so incredibly funny. And of course, Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal, you really just can't go wrong. So definitely one of my favorites. Can't say that I only have one favorite, especially as somebody working in film, but that's on my list.
Um, do you see a rom-com in your future?
Mm, I would love to do a rom-com. I would love to do almost all genres, to be honest. But I really do enjoy working on comedies and romance films and things like that. I've been doing a lot of period war films, and even right now it feels like horror is kind of the big genre, which there's a lot of overlap I see in the pacing and the special effects makeup and the stunt work that's required and the very seriousness of it. But I recently did a comedy last year, and it's just so much fun to work on and so joyful to find those like improv moments with your actors and let them kind of be free. And there's something so lovely about like building chemistry between two actors. I also worked on it was like a dramatic action short where it was these two characters who were in a relationship where one betrayed the other. And so I was very keen on getting my actors they were two stunt actors that I wrote roles for, and we were really trying to push their dramatic chops. And so I really wanted to build chemistry between them and build them up so that like that felt real when there was also that betrayal. And getting to curate that kind of relationship between two people and have them kind of explore the depths of that together is really fun. So, doing romance and comedy and really feeling out that genre, oh God, it would be so much fun. So eventually, yes, absolutely. Either if I get a really great script, I would be super about it, or I'll write one. So we'll see.
Cool. You kind of touched into my next question, but I was wondering if you could speak to the differences and similarities between the horror genre and the war genre.
Yeah, of course. Well, a thing that I felt like was really important when I was working on period war films, particularly because many of them were true history. Like one of them was alt history. And even with alt history, there's a sense of grounding it in the true history and what actually happened in that experience, that I think is really important. And there's just genuine, true horrors of war, and I would be very keen on reading soldier accounts of the war and what that was like, working with military consultants and experts who could give me that perspective and give my actors some training in that and give that perspective. Similarly, with historical reenactors, they would make sure that we were really grounded in the truth of it all. But that experience is its own thing. It's difficult. It's unfathomable. So to represent that and do that justice, that fear, but also that duty, meant a lot to me to really try to do it right. And I think in horror, it's sort of similar where there's like a real genuine fear that people have, even if it's, a ghost that people would debate about whether it's real, or like a demon, or like this manifestation of a thing that we don't necessarily see in our day to day lives, but that fear is real. And, the thing that actually scares me most isn't spirits and exorcisms and things like that. And we could have a whole conversation about what we believe or don't believe. What scares me is body horror, things that like you could see in your day to day life that could really like you could see and actually have happen to you, and that is a real horror in war. That is a real horror in horror films where you do have like wounds and attacks and that fear of being hunted. So that feeling and that tone and that pacing is all very similar. And more to the point, from a practical standpoint, working with a special effects artist, working with stunt coordinators and stunt performers, that from a very technical aspect is similar. How you plan your day around doing those things to make sure that you're doing things safely, that you have enough time to build your special effects rigs right so that they work when you need them to on cue. Okay, we got to reset for the shot. We got to touch up that wound and fix that rig. That all is the same. So there are a lot of similarities, technically, but also just emotionally.
Great. Um, why do you do what you do?
The ultimate basic reason of why I started doing what I do is because growing up, when we had family time, we would watch movies together. It was a point of connection, and even hanging out with friends, you get together and you watch movies, good, bad, or ugly, and you connect over them, and it makes you think about things, and it's not only a point of escapism when you're going through some really tough times, but it's also a point of growth and expansion and thinking about things differently. And I remember watching behind the scenes footage on my DVDs and VHS and being like, wow, that's real magic in real world. And I want to create that. I would love to do that. And I didn't know that it was really a career back then. It's just something that I looked up to. And then, I started exploring it and finding that I could study it and try to see how I could be a part of this crazy circus of a world that I wasn't really sure existed. And now for me, it's really purposeful in trying to create better content. I know content's such a like disgusting buzzword for a lot of people, but it's true. It's the things you consume. It's like putting out things that improve the world, or hope to improve the world, or hope to improve some empathy. And also just more ethical productions, just making sure that safety is the priority, making sure that people feel taken care of, making sure people feel honored. And like the thing I love most about filmmaking is, somebody said this to me the other day, that it's like the most collaborative art form because it requires the most amount of people to all come together to make a thing happen, even on just a single day. It's kind of insane. You see those credits roll and it's hundreds of people. And even in the smallest sense of you and a couple friends on a given day and a weekend going to make a film, that's still at least like what, 3 to 5 of you coming together to make a thing? I mean, that's beautiful. And I think that collective experience together, it feels like memory making. And it is, from the point of view of the crew and the cast making the thing and the memories that they share on those days, to the actual piece of art that you get to look back on and watch and remember from that piece of art, on top of the memory making that comes from just sitting down and viewing a thing, you know, and getting to watch it together with your family and your friends.
Could you tell us a bit about We Harvest?
Yes, I can. So We Harvest is this horror feature film about a young surgeon who's starting his career. He's very ambitious and he's, you know, riddled with self-doubt and student loan debt from medical school.
Med school.
Yes, thank you. And so he's got a lot to live up to, and he finally gets this job at this innovative hospital and he's really excited and he wants to prove himself. But then he inadvertently finds that he has joined an organ harvesting cult. And he has to see if he can scratch and claw his way out of this hole that he's dug in for himself. And it's really thematically, I think, relevant for a lot of people because we've all been facing economic hardships these days. A lot of young people are entering their careers and just trying to find their foothold, and it's really difficult. And there are many times early in your career that you'll work with the wrong people or, you know, go after an opportunity and realize that it's actually like either bringing out the worst in you or you're working with people you don't trust or, you know, things like that. So it's a big morality question about like, what are you willing to do for your ambitions and where is too far and those kinds of things. And so basically it was written by Drew Dusterhoff, who's the lead actor and producer. He hired me to direct it and I've been reworking the script with him over the last couple of years. Mario Garcia-Duenas is also one of our producers who's been an absolute badass, getting us where we need to be, helping us pitch and get the budget going and cleaning up the script as well. He's also going to be our DP. And the three of us have been pitching it around. It's been in that development cycle of, we've got the money, we've got the budget, we're ready to go. We're in pre-production, we're building all our special effects with, you know, the wonderful Marcel Banks, who is of Anaglyph Studios. He worked on Human Centipede 3. You know, we've got our demon all built, and we were ready to do a lot of the other rigs. And as happens in development with films, you know, deals fall through because timing takes too long or this amount of money fell through, and so then, you know, you lose out on this deal because it was about matching that money. And so it's kind of been going through that cycle. And ultimately, I do feel like it's just one of those stories, those classic stories where the film will ultimately benefit from the time it's going to take being in this development cycle. I think already, like, we reworked the script this last year again to try to make it even more efficient and cheaper to produce so that we could go back out to investors and say, hey, we don't even need as much as we said last time. Like, this is what we can do with this script. And frankly, the script is better for it. And I think us as creatives have grown so much over the time that we've been working on it and developing it. I mean, I had never had surgery before, and I am actually terrified of surgery. And as I said, I was terrified of body horror. And that's part of why I was so drawn to the script, was like, this is everything I'm scared of. And I would love to like put that real fear into this. And I had surgery in January for the first time. I passed out and broke my nose and then had to go under and get my nose fixed. And so those kind of experiences, as like maybe esoteric as it sounds, I feel like the film's so much better for all these things that kind of go into it and make it real and really mature the film. So yeah, that's where it's at. It's in this like pseudo development pre-pro stage right now, where we have a lot of assets ready to go. We have a lot of things that we're basically ready to just hit the ground running, start shooting. And now we're just pitching again to get the rest of our funding.
Money is expensive.
Whoo, it is. It certainly is. But, this isn't a very expensive film. And we've seen with movies like Terrifier that, with not a lot of money and a really clear vision, you can do a lot. I mean, Terrifier now 3, I mean, the budget was, God knows, multipliers of what it originally was. And they made multipliers on what they spent. So, horror is really the hot genre.
Yeah, I'm a big horror fan, but I I don't know. I feel like I feel like I want to at some point in my life score a horror movie, but I've never done anything like that. So maybe I start with someone short. But
Yeah, sure, it's a great way to do it, just to like play out those chops a little bit and see and experiment. And I think the lovely thing about film scores is like they come in all shapes and sizes. So I'm trying to think of was it Danzig who did a horror score? There's some like rock artist who made music for a horror movie, and it was so different. Um, 9 Inch Nails, maybe. Anyway, the point is, scores don't have to just be your classic orchestral violins and drums and French horns. It's also, synths and electronic. I mean, even Dark Knight, we talked about earlier, they used a electric guitar with a violin bow to make that iconic screeching kind of sound that you hear with the Joker. So there's so many things you can do, and I honestly really hope that you do score some kind of a film and try that out, because you will ultimately bring such a unique and wonderful voice to it.
And I'm free.
That always helps too, availability and passion.
So, just a clarifying question. No real organs were harmed in production of We Harvest, right?
No, 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 absolutely not. God, there was one, I won't even really get into it. But I will say that, like, there have been artists who've tried to use real organs and were like, no, not real human organs. But still, it was like, yeah, that's not happening. We're not doing any of that. I'm all for practical effects, but I mean practical effects that do not harm animals, humans, or otherwise. So, all fake. All, plastic constructions and whatnot.
But we'll suspend our disbelief when we're watching.
Exactly. And I think there's something really charming about practical effects. Like, even if they're not the most perfect thing in the world, people just appreciate something that's real, that's tangible. And that's, I know this is a whole kind of avenue to go down about like CGI versus practical effects, but I'm always of the mind that you do as much as you can practically, you build that magic in real life because it feels so different for the cast and crew who are actually working with it, and then you enhance it in post. You might plan that you're going to do a VFX on it, okay, we're going to add some bees, some hornets swimming, flying around, and we're not actually going to have bees. But I always take it as an enhancement or like a very specific intentional use of CGI and VFX versus just saying like, green screen the whole thing.
Yeah. Cool. Moving on to the fourth question of the six. What is not important?
Comparisons. And I say this as somebody who obviously falls into that trap, like everybody does. Schedules. I think this is another thing that I fall into the trap of, especially being from Massachusetts, which lives on a very 9 to 5 schedule. I've had to outgrow the idea that, like, if I'm not up at 7 in the morning, I'm unproductive. Like, if you work from 2 p.m. to 2 a.m. and you're getting everything done and you're creating so much, that's just as productive. You don't have to adhere to a lifestyle or schedule that everybody else does just to be seen or think of yourself as responsible. What else is not important? I think, yeah, there's so many other things I could say. but it's really just about like stressing about the little things, letting stuff go and um, being the best is not important. Being your best is important, but being the best, I personally don't think is that important because it's such a like, or perfectionism too. That's something else that I've had to outgrow a lot. You know, perfection is, and I think people have really had this put into perspective with AI. It's like people don't even want perfect. You know, flaws and mistakes actually make it human, and very often this is a thing that you'll find working in production. It's like the mistakes or the happy accidents, as Bob Ross calls them, you end up making into magic. Like on Red Rover, Civil Defense Red Rover, one of the films that I've directed. It was day one. We had, all these shots left on our shot list, and we hit lunch, and we're like, crap, I don't know how we're going to get all this. And I sat down in the FOB, Forward Operating Base, our set. Everybody else was at lunch, and I was just staring at the schedule, staring at the shot list. And I came up with a solution. I was like, you know what? We're going to do it all as a oneer. And it was way better for it. Like, truly beyond better for it. And all that to say, like, embracing mistakes, embracing flaws is actually far more beautiful and can lead to better results than perfection. So yeah, perfection's not important.
Cool. Yeah, I think that definitely carries over into music as well. Um, the little imperfections in the recording are what makes it human.
Yeah. Like, isn't there a story? I don't know if it was Michael Jackson or Frank Sinatra. It was some famous artist where, like, if you really listen to the recording, you can hear them talking on the demo at the beginning of the song, and it's clearly not something that like should have been in the final mix, but honestly gives it so much more character and heart. So yeah, I don't know, and if it's not perfectly in tune, sometimes I don't know, with multi-tonals, it can actually sound wonderful and like interesting or unique.
And textured.
Yeah. Have you noticed that? Like any kind of mistake that you made on your work that then you're like, actually, this is great.
I think my biggest example would be recording guitar solos. Sometimes you make a mistake, but it's in the right spot, and it sounds almost planned, but it's not. It's not anything I could have written beforehand. Um, and then once you make it and you put it out, it's there forever. So, uh, yeah, the pros of streaming are universality, but it would be nice to at some point put out some vinyl.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Have that real scratch and everything.
yeah, the pops.
Mm-hmm.
So, going off music, did you go to Warp Tour?
I did. Wow, that's such a funny question. I the time that I went to Warp Tour, I had a media pass because I was working for the Massachusetts Sierra Club at the time, and they were tabling and participating. And at the time, Warp Tour realized how bad their ecological impact was by being a traveling show with that big of many stages, many artists. Um, and so that's honestly why Warped Tour became what it is now, is because they didn't love how wasteful it was doing it in the previous iteration. So anyway, they were partnering at the time with a lot of environmental groups like the Massachusetts Sierra Club, and we brought together a bunch of volunteers to help clean up and pick up trash and keep the event nice. And I got to shoot some of the acts while I was there, which was really fun, just like right up against the stage. And I got to chat with Kevin Lyman, the founder of Warped Tour, and hearing about the origins of it, of his upbringing in hippie Claremont, California, and that kind of art space. It was really cool. It was a really special time. And I think Warped Tour, for a lot of people in our generation, has a special place in their heart just because so many bands came through that meant a lot to people. And, you got to be in the crowd with tons of other kids like you who feel the same way and are just so excited to be there. So, I don't know. It was a special festival. Did you ever go?
I never got to go, but every year I wanted to. The closest was in like Buffalo, and so it would have been a trek. But um, I I'm glad that it still goes on in its current iteration, at least.
Yeah, me too. I know it's hard. It's hard getting to go see all the bands you'd like to. Actually, a friend of mine had wanted to see McFly for the longest time, and they never came to America. They were such a like British only band. Um, and finally, we like planned a whole trip just to go see them play in England. And I mean, that's not possible all the time. Obviously, it's very expensive to try to travel, as you even mentioned, to like Buffalo just to go see Warped Tour. And then, I mean, let alone like Warped Tour is a long show. So you're going to want to like have a place to stay after. And, you know, you got to buy food while you're there. So it gets to be really expensive. And shows these days are so astronomical, especially with how Ticketmaster gouges people on fees. But, sorry, my foster dog is thrashing in her sleep. Raina!
Okay.
But yeah, so I mean, love going to shows, but it can be really hard to make it out to go see them.
So, circling back to civil defense, Red Rover, can you explain what exactly the package was?
Yes.
Kind of look.
That is a whole journey in itself. So this is back when I was a co-owner, founder of Multi-House with A.K. Moore and Michael Tesler. And we were trying to upstart a lot of our different creative projects. At the time, we were working with a lot of different historical societies to create the different period pieces I kind of mentioned that told a lot of true history and sort of told the history of these historical societies and helped help them with their outreach and explaining what they were about and what happened there. And so, because history was kind of a really big thing for us, and especially for Michael, he created this whole cinematic universe that he really wanted to create very much in the Game of Thrones world, or even like Fallout is probably a better comp these days. Which is to say, it was like an alt history 1950s. If the Cold War turned hot, and the United States got bombed by nuclear weapons from foreign powers, and so because it's an absolute post-apocalyptic shambles, America falls into a civil war amongst itself, trying to vie for control of the country and reassert some kind of stability, whoever is in control and what they think that should look like, good, bad, or otherwise. So then you have all these different factions that are fighting. And so that's really what Civil Defense Red Rover was, is like civil defense was an actual real civilian organization where people, average citizens, would step up and try to help their community in the case of if there was nuclear or otherwise kind of warfare on the home front, that this would be a group that would mobilize. So civil defense was a real thing. We created our own version of the logo just to differentiate the fact that this is all history, this isn't real. But this is a what if. And so Red Rover is essentially if this local civil defense unit is trying to keep a package secure from evil factions that want it for their own gain and to take control. And then, of course, there's other factions who have their own aims, and they step in at the end, and, it's all kind of a power grab for this one package, which, spoiler alert, is a weapon. And is kind of that chess piece that would really move who's in control at this given time. So Michael always wanted us to create this universe. We had created a couple different shorts in this world. We were really building it out and writing all this material for it so that we could really pitch out the show and do this whole thing properly. And Red Rover was sort of like that first step in it, where we pitched to a company called Firework, which at the time was this app that was trying to compete with TikTok. And their whole really cool patented technology was that you could watch something on your phone, and as it turned, the image stayed upright, and you would see either more or less of the image. And so our whole thing was like, we'll create this cross-platform campaign where people will watch the short on YouTube, and then if they want to see the sequels, these micro shorts on Firework, it will kind of drag people over and they'll see what happens to Hal, Greg Alba from the Real Rejects played him, or what happens to, Eli and all the different characters that you see, or like Hudson, played by Eliza Blair. So, and then we also did like comic strips, I should say, graphic novels. And we tried like an AR experience and just really tried to build out this whole campaign to get people really invested and interested in different pieces of the content and lore. By the time we were ready to release, Firework had kind of shifted their focus to Chinese and Asian markets. So they were less focused on our campaign at the time. Sorry, I just got a client call that I have to silence for now. They were less focused on our campaign by the time we came out with it, so it didn't get the same marketing push that we were really hoping for and the support that we needed for it to really thrive and the full vision that we had pitched them. On the plus side, we basically got funding to make all this content in the cinematic universe that meant so much to us. So, it's all kind of a interesting journey in the creative world, how you get the resources to make a thing versus what it takes to actually get it seen by everybody and the marketability required to really get those eyes on it.
Sounds like there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah. And we took on a lot. Like, I will say, at that time we were early 20s, very ambitious, thinking that the world, and not to say that the world isn't our oyster, but like we bit off a lot. And, it was, I don't even know how quite to say it. Like, that ambition was worthwhile, and I'm thrilled we did it, but it's no surprise that it didn't take off in the big, massive way we'd hoped. It would require a lot of things to work out just perfectly for that magic spark to hit,
Yeah, but you're always hoping your next project is going to be the one that blows up.
Yeah.
But at least for me, I've learned to just be happy if a song hits 1,000 plays.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true, and I'm honestly sad that it got taken down because we did a whole media push for it. I was on Real Rejects with Greg promoting it, and we did a bunch of other promotional things, and so where it lived before on YouTube had all these comments and views, and we could really see like the engagement we had. And then I want to say it was Michael or somebody at Multihouse took it down because they kind of rebranded themselves in years since AK and I left, and so we can't really see what the views were really like, but it's out there. People can watch it. It's on my YouTube channel, if nothing else, just so it's viewable for people and enjoyable for the casting crew who put so much into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kind of similar. What is legacy?
Oh. I mean, it's, in simple terms, what exists after you're gone. And I don't think you get control over that, to be honest. I think everybody wants to feel like they do or can have a say in what their legacy is, or to feel like they can have control over whether or not they even have a legacy. But all you can really do is your best to make something that lasts and that positively affects the people after you and leave something behind for the benefit of your community. And, it's that feeling, it's that saying, like, people don't remember what you said, they remember how you made them feel. And that is a legacy. A legacy is like something that lives beyond you and is kind of an idea,
Mm-hmm. Hopefully, I guess I make a lot of stuff to create that thing that people can visit after I'm gone, but I don't know how that works if like Spotify shuts down.
I know. Well, it's funny that you asked that question right after I mentioned that, Red River was taken down from its original distribution platform, or the original channel it was posted to. Because, how can you in this digital world control where these assets live and exist permanently? That's why physical media is such a big deal. And even as you were saying earlier, like it would be really cool to have a vinyl because it's like this physical piece that even if it deteriorates over time, it still exists. It's still tangible. It can't just disappear on the digital sphere one day and you're like, where'd it go? You know? So I don't know. I think people will remember the music. They'll remember hearing your songs and what they meant to them, especially in a time when they really needed to hear that one lyric or that one, chord progression that really just hit some chord in their heart. So that memory will live on even beyond whatever digital or physical file exists of it.
Yeah, I guess that's the hope, right?
Yeah.
Well, a little lighter of a question, but what is one of your favorite historical figures and why?
I should have a like go-to answer for this. Um I mean, the easy answer would be like an Eleanor Roosevelt, right? Because I think there are so many, or Ruth Bader Ginsburg. A lot of the, sorry, Dana, my dog. A lot of the classic feminist figures that paved the way so much for the rest of us to have the opportunities we do now, or just even to like show what can be, in a world where like that wasn't necessarily the case, or who fought for things when it wasn't easy. God, there's so many. Do you have a favorite?
Again, I gotta hold my answer.
Yeah, sorry. It's so easy to want to just like have a conversation with you about it. God, I really should have better answers for these. I think it's because I've like done so much historical research in my brain. It's just like a big jumble of. Ooh, Rena. Sorry, she's blind, so she'll walk into things. It's on, and the thing about it is like there's so much of history that is always about like the big name, and it doesn't recognize all the other little people, all the other people who are part of it that don't get written in the history books, that don't get the same kind of recognition. And because history is so often written by the victor, I think that's what makes it really complicated for me. Because trying to say that I love this one historical figure feels like picking the victor in some ways, and picking a perspective on a person that is almost separate from the actual person. It's like picking a favorite perspective of a person, or a character that somebody's represented. Because you could say somebody like Abraham Lincoln, right? But like he's a lot more complicated than what I think people off the bat think about. He had positive and
positive. Someone has picked Abraham Lincoln, so.
Which a good figure to pick, fair. But when you really break it down, like certainly he had policies that were unpopular for good reason, or certainly he's had policies that are popular for fantastic reasons. And had a great cultural impact. But that's why it's kind of complicated. It's almost like picking a writer would feel more authentic because you could connect with their work rather than their. I almost want to say their legacy, because like the legacy of a person is different from the person. Their impact is different from who they were. Sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. Yeah, I know. I feel like I didn't really answer your question, so I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I think because I know too much about history, it's almost like picking a favorite movie. Like I know that I'm gonna get asked that question, so I have to have some answers for it, but I haven't been asked that before, so I haven't like curated my answer to that question in a succinct way.
Yeah, I think you still answered the question, uh, in a way.
Thank you.
All right. I have two more questions for you. Uh, is there a book that you would want to turn into a movie?
I have considered turning The Wall and the Wing into a movie very recently. It was a book I grew up with that's a little quirky, a little funky. I think it came out in like 2006 or something. I didn't even realize there was a sequel till I was going back to reread it. Um, but I think there's something so wonderful about YA. Like obviously Harry Potter and um, Hunger Games. Those are very popular YA that really speak to people and I think really expand your imagination. For me, I loved the Golden Compass, the His Dark Material series. I don't feel like they ever fully realized that series. And to be fair, even if they did finish out the TV show or the series, I'm not sure it would have had the same tone as what I read in the books. But that's your experience as a kid reading something versus like an adaptation, right? And it's always going to be a little different. And we could have a whole conversation about that, especially around something like Wuthering Heights. But um, yeah, I don't know. I also thought about The Night Circus. That's another wonderful book. That's more, I think, for adults. But I just love something that's so imaginative and otherworldly and different that books can do because your imagination can take it and isn't limited. Um, the Night Circus would be a really interesting adaptation because the circus is kind of an abstract concept that's very mutable and almost an entity on its own. So that would be sort of very difficult to adapt properly in some ways. I do see how it could happen, and I have a strong vision for it. But all that to say, I think the mediums are different, and you almost have to, when you're adapting, be very aware of that limitation, you know, and think outside that box in a lot of ways. But because The Wall and the Wing meant so much to me as a kid, and I always remembered it, and I haven't really seen people talking about it or looking to. I mean, I think somebody has optioned it at some point, and maybe it was sort of being looked at for adaptation, but it hasn't come to a fruition yet. It's something that I've considered, so I don't know. I've even looked into like, okay, I could contact their literary agent or the media agent and see if it's of interest. But when you work in the industry, it's sort of one of those things where either you have to be a big enough name where they can be like, yeah, we'll have you do it, or you have to come with the script ready to go. So, chicken and egg.
Yeah. We'll keep our eyes and ears out for that.
Are there any books that you really love? Since it's not a question in your docket, I feel like I can ask.
Um, I hmm, I I think like the books that I consider like core to my identity are like The Bell Jar and like As I
Mm.
Lay Dying, Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. But a lot of stream of consciousness stuff and a lot of mental illness content.
Feel that.
um, but I think The Bell Jar might be getting an adaptation soon. So
I think I heard that, yeah. I don't know if it's just in like the long script writing process or if it's going through optioning agreements and, what that's going to look like. But yeah, I think it's been in development for a minute.
yeah, so maybe one day that'll come out.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see.
So this is our final question. What advice would you give your 18-year-old self, and would you take that advice?
Well, I'll answer this backwards. I probably wouldn't have taken the advice because I think there's a lot of arrogance is the wrong word for youth, but like you almost have to make those mistakes. You wouldn't really like learn those things as a core part of your being and identity if you don't lived through that experience to some extent. And I think I would have felt so um, anxiety ridden about the responsibility of it all I would have just done it anyway. Anybody could tell me like, oh, you should relax more and enjoy the process and like make more mistakes and take more risks and try different things that you wouldn't think, or like don't be afraid to put yourself out there. But like I was terrified to write an email when I was 22. Like I couldn't even, you know, respond to professionals or like ask for advice without being so anxious about it. I was just so duty ridden about like having to be perfect and having to do things the right way and work hard and make money and like be seen as somebody who's responsible, that like I had to outgrow that identity before I could accept that advice as real. So yeah, I mean, there's plenty I would probably want to say to my younger self. Be careful who you trust or what you invest in. Invest more in yourself and your own creative projects. That's something I think I would have given myself a lot sooner. But to be honest, I think I needed to gain the confidence of working on other people's projects and to be seen as a creative resource for other people and uplift their dreams before I felt confidence in my own and my own voice. So again, like as much as I could say like, you know, try writing more of your own ideas and try exploring and have fun creating. I don't think I was emotionally mature enough to handle that yet, you know? And now I am, just because I've like done enough work to be like, yeah, why shouldn't I?
Yeah. Yeah, we gotta make the mistakes to learn the lessons, I guess.
Yeah, at least that's how I feel. I mean, certainly there's some mistakes you can learn from other people and their experiences, and I think that's sort of the beauty of filmmaking and storytelling is like it was often even around the campfire used as a way of like, let me tell you this story to warn you about the dangers of like wandering into the woods at night. You might like run into dangerous characters, but like some things that are more of like an intrinsic identity thing, you really have to just experience yourself and decide when you're like done with that old identity, you know?
Yeah. You gotta hope you're still around after you've experienced those things.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, this has been pretty cool. For the Grod heads out there, my guest Julia Tranfaglia just gave us a 10 out of 10 interview.
Thank you. It's been a
Um,
wonderful time on your podcast, Young Greasy, and thank you for inviting me on. It's been special.
for sure. Do you have any last minute plugs you want to make?
Mm. Well, feel free to check out my work at juliatranfaglia.com. You just Google me, you'll find me. It's me and me with that name. But I'm going to be putting out a couple shorts that I shot last year. I'll probably put out the comedy short on my YouTube channel just because I feel like more things need to just be shared for free for people to enjoy. The other short I've been debating about putting it into film festivals first, because I realized after Civil Defense Red Rover, if you put it out on YouTube or elsewhere, it disqualifies you from a lot of festivals, which is good for young filmmakers to know that like a lot of times the bigger festivals will require you premiere at their festival before you show it elsewhere. So that one might go to festivals before I put it out, but yeah, feel free to check out the work. IMDb, We Harvest, you know, any kind of interest in the creative stuff we put out, even Peter and the Ghost on Spotify, it really means a lot just to share the work and, you know, I hesitate to say be appreciated for it, but to like share it with other people and feel like they've connected with it in some way, you know? So thank you. It means a lot.
Sure. All right. And we're out.